thank everyone for carving out time today to be with us as we dive into fundraising for life saving. We have really a treat for you today. We have Chris Ross, our Senior Managing Partner and Senior Grants Director, joining us today. He's going to walk us through some really impressive work that he's put together. A case study with Susan G. Komen, the community grant application, and much more. Chris has 15 years of grant writing experience, and he's raised millions of dollars for very worthy nonprofit organizations and healthcare institutions. So I am very excited to have Chris leading us through today's webinar. This series is the TGG Fundraising Institute, and the mission of this series is to provide information that would help you, your organization, continue to make impact in your community. So I would like to, again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And I will give you a little outline of what we're hoping to accomplish. Chris is going to run us through a presentation, and at the end, we will have some time for some questions and answers. So at any point in time, if something comes up and you're interested in getting some feedback, you can type your question into the chat box on the right-hand side of the GoToMeeting navigational box. So again, thank you so much. I'm happy to turn this over to Chris Ross, who's joining us from sunny California. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone, and I'm glad you could join us today. As Jonathan indicated, we're going to cover fundraising for life saving. We're going to cover a number of principles that will apply to all sorts of fundraising, but it will be with an eye to healthcare funding in particular. And we're going to be using examples, as Jonathan said, from a Susan G. Komen application. We're going to be using some of the grant guidelines from their Wisconsin affiliate, one of their Wisconsin affiliates. And we'll be using also some text from a California application. And again, the point here is not necessarily to show you how to apply specifically to this grant program, but to get to outline principles that will be applicable in healthcare funding more broadly. So our goals, we want to discuss methods for planning a successful grant proposal. Those are going to include these items listed here: needs assessment, research, program design, budget, evaluation, cultivating funders. And we want to discuss tools necessary for writing clearly and compellingly. That's going to include the writing process and a technique called GOAMs, which is basically goals, objectives, activities, and measures. Some additional items in our grant proposal overview. We want to talk about understanding the funder guidelines, which are sometimes called the request for proposals, or RFPs, or notice of funding availability, NOFAs. They can go by a variety of names. We'll talk about developing specialized techniques for winning complex grant proposals, and developing budgets and evaluations that are competitive, realistic, achievable, and just understanding submission requirements generally. You want to begin your project with a needs assessment to reveal your funding gaps. As you talk about your budget constraints within your organization, think about what is it that makes your needs exceptional. Why do you especially deserve funding, or why would it be especially effective with your organization? You want to consider emerging needs. Is there a developing problem in the area that you're struggling to deal with? You want to evaluate needs versus wants. You don't want to waste your time on an application that lacks a compelling need and a strong plan. So you want to make sure that your proposal is going to be justified, first of all, just in showing that you really do need this money and you can't put it to good use. you'll look for statistics to show the proof of your need, that it really exists. And one of the sources that you can go to, and there, of course, there are many, but we just put one here, is that there are various county or service area health needs assessments available, and they go into great detail about the target population, the demographics, whether they're economically disadvantaged, poverty rates, low educational attainment, all sorts of things of that nature. Sorry, skip buttons. With funders, as you're doing your research, you're of course looking for finding the funder that fits your need. And as you identify funders, you want to read their guidance very closely, not only to ensure a good fit, but to avoid nasty surprises during the application process. And that can take a variety of forms, whether through required documents, something about the submission process, any idiosyncrasies there. Perhaps there are authorizations that are time-consuming and need to be secured before you can apply, or even drop-down menus where you may find that based on your answer as you go through an online application, you may find that there are additional questions that you were not aware of before that all of a sudden they're in a drop-down menu. So you want to allow yourself some extra time in case the guidance doesn't cover everything. You want to consider competitiveness, depending on the program. Between 1 out of 3 and 1 out of 16 applications may be funded, or even fewer. So you should figure that your proposal really needs to be pretty strong in order to have a shot. And of course, you want to be aware of when funding opportunities are likely to appear from various organizations, so that you are prepared with adequate turnaround time. Eligibility. Again, you want to pay very close attention to your funding guidelines, and I would recommend that you actually create a written outline of the program guidance and have it in an overview document where you have gone through it with a fine-tooth comb and you know all the requirements and everything that is going to be required in terms of information, authorization, document, submission, not only dates, but submission times, because sometimes you will find that some funders say it has to be in by, for example, 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So you just need to be aware of all those things. Some selected issues in the example that we're using with the Susan G. Komen Wisconsin affiliate, there was a particular requirement for insurance that an insurance policy that specifically indemnified the Susan G. Komen Foundation up to $1 million damage, which is an unusual requirement. That's an example of something that we're aware of. In this case, in geography, you have to be very aware of geography. In this case, there were specific counties and 1/2 of one county that were eligible. The type of project. This grant program provided funds for education, screening, diagnostic testing for rural and minority women specifically. Allowable expenses and forbidden expenses. To get innovative proposal, you should get your proposal in a state where it is really innovative. One of the things that you want to do is to research the best practices in that field. And you can do that by a variety of means. One way is through the literature that's available within your particular field, or looking at grant proposals proposals that have been funded recently, and seeing what your particular funder is providing funding for. So if you have an idea of what the latest thinking is in that field, that doesn't mean that you have to copy exactly what the company is doing, but you should at least be aware what others are doing to address similar problems so that you are not in the position of recreating. And you want to be showing that you are filling an unfilled niche. Now, sometimes that's as simple as showing that you are meeting a need within your area that has not yet been met in your area. In other cases, you are going to need to show how you are able to perform that solution better or in a new way. Perhaps you are doing something that no one else is doing, and you can show that you're creating a model program, a pilot program, and it's going to be replicable in other jurisdictions so that you are not able, are not only able to show benefit in your geography, but something that benefits people perhaps nationwide. And you want to brainstorm what is the plausible best and worst case outcome of your funding decision. The best case is going to show all the benefits that your solution could potentially bring, and the worst case is going to show if you don't get this grant, here's the problem that's going to continue to exist. Here are all the follow-on problems that are going to happen. So you're showing the difference from two angles, what you are going to do with the grant funding. Now, as you proceed through the grant proposal instruction, you're going to have a program design meeting, and what that will do, we likened it to sketching and framing a house. And so you're going to lock in your primary contact, and that person is either going to be the subject matter expert, or it's going to be a person who is the funnel for all the information from all the key players within your organization. Maybe that person is somebody who is assigned to communicate with an outside organization who's creating the proposal, such as the Grace Group. And so that person, you need to give consideration to their ability to be, first of all, accessible during the grant writing and submission period, but also accessible in terms of the access they have to all the key players and subject matter experts. And you're going to, as you create the agenda for the program design meeting, going to use that overview of the guidelines to develop your initial questions, the information that's going to be required of all the key players. You'll write out your agenda, and you'll work all your key players into working together to create the adequate goals, objectives, activities, and evaluation measures that are going to be skeleton of your proposal. At that point, you're going to develop a preliminary budget. And the budget is very important to form early in this process because that is what's going to drive a lot of the decisions in the program design, as well as application design. And we recommend creating what we call a mock application. And that is basically a dummy application where you have maybe a 3-ring binder, and you use that as your mock-up. And you're going to put sheets of paper for each section of the application. So, for example, the first part might be cover letter goes here, application form goes here, grant narrative section 1 goes here, section 2 goes here. You have your various questions that you need to get answered for those sections. And budget goes here, audited financials go here. And so you just create create that mock application according to whatever the guidelines say are necessary. That will help to make sure that you don't miss anything in this process. And some of these processes are pretty complicated. Executing the program design, we've likened to plumbing to final touches on a construction project. I won't go over this in great detail, but essentially, you just need to make sure that your work plan and timeline are clear, that you've defined all your roles and responsibilities, that you've established internal deadlines for getting information back and forth, that you communicate well throughout this process, that everyone's prepared for getting drafts of the proposal and they're willing and ready to turn those reviews around in a reasonable amount of time. You want to plan your final review and proofreading and plan to submit ideally several days early in case you run into any problems. Let's discuss the writing process briefly. Here are some nuts and bolts for making a competitive proposal. In terms of content, you want to make sure that you answer all the questions that have been asked of you. And what we recommend doing is that you make the reviewer's life as easy as possible by answering the questions in the same sequence in which they're asked. And in fact, whenever possible, what we do is we use section heading to basically either regurgitate or restate the guideline question so that we are answering directly A for A, B for B, C for C, and the reviewer has it just easy as pie to see that all the questions have been answered. We write to the scoring criteria and make sure that we include that kind of language that they use in the scoring criteria so that they can see, oh yeah, here's the criteria that we're looking for. This is how they're going to meet it. In terms of creativity, it's important to tell a compelling story if you can. Create a picture in the reviewer's mind, but of course beware of embellishment. Put a human face on the story whenever possible. Mechanics, I think that sort of speaks for itself, but you'd be surprised how many people don't use spell check or have anybody else check over their work to make sure that nothing is missed. Wanting to do those things. In terms of flow, is your argument logical and consistent? That's why you want to use a reviewer to make sure you haven't assumed anything that maybe should not be assumed. Be concise. Don't go longer than you have to, but use all the available pages if you need to. Your draft, we've already mentioned, and the basic thing is to write clearly. You don't have to be fancy or artful, but it is important to be clear so that your meaning is easily understood. We're running a little behind, so I'm going to skip this page other than just to say, put yourself in the reviewer's shoes, think about what they are wanting to see, and then do your best to deliver that as clearly as you can. We're going to take a look at a sample Komen narrative, and we're looking at the third draft stage. The reason that we have done this is it's going to let you see a virtually finished project, or product rather, but it still has some of the items that are left in during the creative process that give context to the client, to the key personnel that are involved in the effort so that they understand what's going on, and you will too. Moving on to the next one. Komen required an organization summary. And so you can see here they asked for us to provide a brief description of the organization's history. It could program is part of a larger organization. We explain the mission and your relationship to it. We were allowed 750 characters. So I won't read through all of this, but I just want to point out that that's what we've done here. We've shown how large the organization is, where it's located, how long it's been around, their answer center, and how it fits within the context of the larger organization. A little bit about how it's staffed, faculty care, a little bit of history of their services, and the fact that they offer the state-of-the-art diagnostic tools. We were also required to write an abstract narrative, and you'll notice all the different colors on this page. What we are doing here is I've broken this down by color just to emphasize to you what we're looking at as we go through this process to make sure that we get everything that has been required. So you see the purpose of the program in yellow, purple, a description of key activities that's addressed in the red, summary of evaluation methods addressed in green, and expected or resulting changes your program will likely bring in your community in the blue section. In the black part are background information and text that ties it all together as additional content. Another section required under the Komen grant was addressing cultural competence, which is somewhat out of the ordinary requirement. And also we were required to address fiscal ability, and just wanted to give you examples there of how we did that, because it's a little bit out of the ordinary. So we just said, as I've indicated previously, our staff is committed to providing culturally and linguistically competent services to our diverse community. Approximately 40% of the breast health center staff is bilingual Spanish-English and bicultural. So short and sweet, but it's a reasonable answer. And likewise, you can see here what we did there with regard to fiscal capability, the HMC, which is the client, the agency firm that ensures the efficacy of internal financial control. We talked about their board of directors, how they verify transparency, and successfully managed numerous training boards. I won't go into a lot of detail here, but basically, again, we actually cut out some of the criteria so we can fit this on the screen, but the point here is, again, just maybe you need to color code that helps you. We will address all areas required. But color coding is a handy little tool that I sometimes use just make sure that I'm keeping the various portions straight in my mind and everything is going to addressed. Also along the lines of considering how you describe your need, you want to make sure that you don't waste your space or your energy in telling reviewers what they already know. So, for example, in Susan G. Komen's case, they don't need to know the problems associated with breast cancer generally. They already know that. And unfortunately, some grant applicants I have seen, they go on a great length about how women with breast cancer suffer from A, B, and C. That's just really not necessary. Instead, what you want to do is explain how the problem is different in your area, or special in your area. So in this example, we've given a lot of health statistics about the service area of the applicant, but I want to draw your attention to this first bullet point. Areas statistics for breast cancer are survey. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health reports that for Service Provider Area 3, breast cancer is the second most common cause of death and premature death. Now that's a pretty compelling statistic, and it is very convincing to an organization like Komen that a special problem exists in this area, and so it merits special attention. I think I'll skip over this one. Showing an example of how we wrap up the statement. Review criteria. There's a lot of information here, and maybe you want to go back and look at this. This will be available online. Jonathan will probably tell how to access that information, but I will just go through a little bit the very end statements in each of these paragraphs. About the statement of need, what you want to think about is making sure the reviewer cannot miss the connection between the proposed activities and the funder's goals and objectives. In the program design, you want to explain how it makes sense to believe that your plan is going to work. Explain your plan. Walk the reviewer through it. And give them assurance, give them evidence to believe that everything is going to keep going when the funding period is over. That is part of the concern. About impact, this is the heart of the proposal on some level. And so you want to be detailed about who will be helped, how many will be helped, and describe that benefit on a human level. Often, healthcare applications will ask you about your organization's capacity. One of the things that Komen in particular was concerned about is making sure that the application is reasonable. So make sure that the project that you propose is in fact within your ability to carry out, and explain why that is the case. Make sure that your narratives explain the resources you have in place to make sure that everything is going to work out well. Talk about your leadership. Talk about the qualifications of your staff. Monitoring and evaluation. This is often where applicants get stuck, because they're not sure how to explain how they'll know when they succeed. Maybe they know their program makes sense, but they just don't know how to prove it. So give real thought to that at the beginning rather than the end of this process. Give that adequate time. And what sometimes is done is we'll use surveys. They ask the patients before and after, or whoever their intended audience is, what were things like before, and now that we've implemented this program, did it help you? How did it help you? How is it different from what happened before? Budget is very important, of course, and the thing that I want to emphasize here is link the narrative to the budget, so that when people read your budget, they don't all of a sudden feel like they're in a different world from what you talked about in your grant narrative. As you go through the budgeting process, you realize that figures can sometimes be estimates, sometimes not. If there are some things that we understand that you're going to have to figure out along the way, that's all right. But sometimes, as in Komen's case, they know very specifically what level of payment they will provide for each service that is provided. It will not exceed the rate of what is paid by Medicare. So you've got a down to the penny explanation of what your expenses are, at least for some service. And then you want to, of course, make the best cost to benefit ratio. Explain that in your application. sure that all your budget figures are easily justified, either in writing in the application, or if you come back and ask questions, you're able to explain what all the expenses are for and why they make sense. And just make sure that you run that through your team and make sure everybody's looking at that and asking questions. The key factor here is be realistic. Won't spend a lot of time on in-kind match, but these are when in-kind match is allowed and desired. These are some sources that you might think of. Volunteer hours, administrative costs, fringe benefits, administrative overhead rates, equipment, facilities, use rates on the part of consultants, office expenses, whatever you can think that is allowable under the guidelines. Evaluation measures, you want to be aware of both your outcomes and your outputs. The products that are created during the implementation of your grant program. So that can take the form of reports, training manuals. Of course, you want to use SMART goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. I'm going to have to speed this up a little bit so that we have room for questions. Forms, just say there are forms, and you need to fill them out, obviously. Submission tips, again, try to submit early whenever possible. And give yourself time to deal with program idiosyncrasies or the system being out of whack or what have you. Submission time, suffice it to say that you want to have all your ducks in a row and give yourself, again, extra time and make sure everything is good. Check it and check it again. Cultivating funders, Meet the Funders conferences are useful. Developing relationships with program officers, phone calls, whatever meeting times they may make available, or whatever entity happens to make available. Asking questions, always keep communication going. Sometimes you're limited in these regards, but use these opportunities as they are available. So our summary for grant writing success, 80% is planning, 20% execution. Try to front end all the work, approvals, registration, documents, information, whatever you need. Know the guidelines well, create a mock application, delegate your roles and responsibilities, here's the deadline, write clearly, make sure you've got some method of evaluation in mind early in the process, and put yourself in the reviewer's shoes, and of course, again and again, make sure that you are responding very specifically to program guidelines. Last slide is just a reminder that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and what this particular picture is showing the difference in view between a two-dimensional breast imaging machine and a 3D breast imaging machine, showing how that cancer could be easily missed in the two-dimensional and seen more easily in the three-dimensional, because it's like a series of slices that when you put them all together and run through them, it's like a 3D image that we can manipulate and turn around and watch like a movie. And that was one of the things that made the difference in a grant that we wrote that was funded for $300,000 to buy a breast imaging machine. That was not Komen, by the way. That was from a different organization. But once again, the point there is just that sometimes it's not the words. Sometimes if you have a picture or a diagram, whatever you can do to make your case very clear, compelling, want to do. So with that, I got a text from Jonathan saying it's about time to wrap up so that we can have some questions. But, Jonathan or Andrew, I will turn it over to you and excuse me, and let you manage the question part of the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Just a great presentation. Wonderful job at really just highlighting the importance of being prepared and really diving into the guidelines. Reminds me of a quote, I believe, by Abraham Lincoln that says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend 4 hours sharpening my axe." And in a lot of what we do, we are really good at sharpening axes here in the Grace Group. So we do have a question I would like to ask Chris. Someone asked, when is it okay to reach out to a funder via phone or prior to submitting an application or a letter?
Well, I would say that it is okay to reach out to a funder whenever they have made their contact information available, and the information on their guidelines and their website does not indicate that you are discouraged from doing so. I would say that if you do contact a funder, that you have your questions lined up in such a way that they will be intelligent questions and that they are sort of engineered to not only enlighten you, but maybe also invite or open the doorway for further communication down the road. So sometimes this is easy. The Amundsen Foundation, for example, in Los Angeles County, is very friendly and helpful. There is another foundation that I will not name in Los Angeles County, but they are very much the opposite. And they do not want really any contact with you except in a very prescribed time frame and in very prescribed conditions. So it just depends on the funder, but I would say make their contact information freely available in the doorways.
Great. That's great. Thank you, Chris. Are there any other questions? Again, if you have any questions and you would like to use the chat box, we will just take a couple, probably just take another minute here as we wrap up. So if you do, just feel free to type that into the chat box in the GoToMeeting window box. As we close, I want to thank everyone for your participation today. And if you are listening to this as a recording, if you could not participate with us live, we would like to extend an offer to you. If you have any questions about our process, the way we work with our clients, and really the way that Chris really dives into the needs of our client partners, I would suggest reaching out to us. We're going to follow up with an email with everyone that was invited to this webinar. In that email, you can schedule a one-on-one free 30-minute consultation, no strings attached. If you just have questions about a specific grant or maybe an opportunity that's on your radar, use this time with one of really the best grant writers in the industry to bounce off some ideas. That's what we're here for. We really want to help you, again, make more impact in your community. So as we round out here, again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. I want to wish you all the best this year with your grant writing and funding project. Again, if you are interested in learning more about the Grace Group or chatting with one of our grant writers, feel free to reach out, and we'd love to schedule that time with you. I do not see any other questions in our chat box, so at this time, we will bring this webinar to a close, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you all know that in this work you are the lightning rod for change and impact. And it's an honor to work with you all in the same mission of providing sustainable impact in our communities. Thank you all very much. Hope you have a wonderful week. And, take care and God bless.